Aloha and welcome to Hawaii Sports Update. I'm here once again with my man Justin Baptiste. And Justin, glad to have you back again.
Good to see you again.
As we were going to be here breaking down the NBA playoff once more for you. Big news, of course, on the Cleveland side. If you were watching, Kevin Love got his shoulder dislocated, and he's out with a torn labrum, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. There have been reports up to 2 weeks, and as recently as today, there have been reports that he might miss the entire playoffs and the rest of the season. So we're going to have to see what's going on with Kevin Love. But Justin, any surprises besides Milwaukee, Chicago? I mean, we'll start in the East. Atlanta and Brooklyn's tied up 2-2. Cleveland swept, but they have some big problems coming ahead. J.R. Smith is out for 2 games. Kevin Love might be out indefinitely. Washington's actually sitting pretty nice. They swept Toronto. They're waiting on the winner of the Atlanta-Brooklyn series, and then Chicago and Milwaukee is 3-2, man. Any surprises to you?
I'm really surprised about how well Milwaukee was able to come back into this series and tie this, well, not tie it up, but get to 3-2.
Right, especially after being down 3-0. You know, that's a young team. And of course, you know, Milwaukee is led by Michael Carter-Williams, the guy out of North Carolina. You know, point guard supreme. I guess Jason Kidd is kind of taking Michael Carter-Williams under his wing, as Jason Kidd was back then known as a tall point guard at 6'5", you know, who had a decent shot. And Michael Carter-Williams seems to be learning underneath Jason Kidd's tutelage, and Milwaukee has tightened that series up. You know, what do you feel like Jimmy Butler, Derrick Rose, Noah, Paul Gasol, what are these guys going to have to do to step up their game, you know, to stop this Milwaukee momentum, winning 2 games in a row?
Well, I mean, you look at Milwaukee, you look at how tough they've been playing, especially with the way they looked solid in these last 2 games. They've been playing pretty well. I mean, O.J. Mayo has stepped up, but Michael Carter-Williams has been the X factor and the key to their success. So if they can continue what they've been doing in these last 2 games, they'll definitely have a chance to win. But as far as the Bulls are concerned, they got to play how they've been playing their whole season, man. Hero ball is what everybody's been talking about. But they have to continue to dominate in the paint and continue to get turnovers and get stops.
Well, when I look at Chicago, you know, the big story on them prior to this year, of course, was, you know, their defense is awesome, and we know that, and you know they can lock down teams for certain amounts of times, but they really sacrifice that on the offensive end of things.
Right.
And so now, with a little bit different team, Chicago has suffered a little bit defensively, but in the playoffs, it's the offense that you need to get you over that hump. And so now, with Jimmy Butler scoring at a way higher rate, Paul Gasol coming in, okay, and Derrick Rose back healthy, you know, a lot of people are thinking that with a healthy Chicago team, you know, maybe they do have the offensive firepower this year to finally get over the hump. And especially if you start looking towards the next matchup with Cleveland. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of them because Milwaukee is playing good. And, you know, they're going to Game 6 right now, and that's back in Milwaukee. And if Milwaukee holds its home court, then Chicago's going to be forced into a 7th game. But just saying hypothetically that Chicago, you know, faces Cleveland in the next round, now Kevin Love is out, J.R. Smith is out for 2 games, and Chicago now has the offensive firepower sort of to deal with those lows, those 5 to 7 minute lows that they've been known for in the playoffs, you know, of not scoring. They actually have some guys who can put the ball in the basket now. What do you have to say about that analysis?
Very much well said. But you forgot to also mention with with the Milwaukee game, with the Chicago game, no team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit.
Oh, of course.
And if Milwaukee is able to cap that off, I think they'll be the first team to ever come back from a 3-0 deficit.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Chicago goes as Derrick Rose goes. You know, even though they have Paul Gasol and even though Jimmy Butler's scoring, like I said, without Derrick Rose being that facilitator and you know, distributing the ball and getting them to the right spots at the right time, especially in clutch moments, that's what I say. As Chicago goes, as Derrick Rose goes, that's how Chicago goes. And so, you know, he's been a little bit rusty. He's been sort of high on turnovers, you know, the last couple of games. But to me, that's just aggression, you know. You don't want to take that aggression away from him. If he feels good enough to be playing that aggressive, you know, you're just going to have to deal with some of the turnovers maybe. But that's going to be an interesting series if Cleveland, I mean, if Chicago gets through and they go on to face Cleveland in that next round. Now, Atlanta and Brooklyn, man, pretty much everybody thought this series was over. How did Brooklyn get their second win, and where did it come from, man?
Well, I think Brooklyn took it as, well, we're a much better team. We're the 8th seed. Our record is not that good, but we have to fight and fight and fight until we can get, you know, a tie. And they ended up getting a tie. I think how they were able to come back into this series was they had Williams. Williams was playing well. Deron Williams was playing well. They also had Brook Lopez, who's playing well. Joe Johnson has been a key. And also some of the European players that have been playing off the bench and starting for the Brooklyn Nets. But they've tied it up, and I was surprised to see this game being tied up.
Well, you know, the big thing about Paul Pierce, you know, in the paper before the playoffs got started, you know, Pierce played for Brooklyn last year, and he pretty much threw Deron Williams and Joe Johnson under the table. You know, he said that they are good professionals, but when you talk about NBA playoffs, you talk about next level kind of guys. Both of those guys have been all-stars. Both of those guys have got the physical ability to perform well. So what he was saying is that they didn't prepare themselves.
Aloha, my name is Miley Scarpino, and I'm the host of
they took off practices, and when you talk about being a leader on a team, especially Deron Williams and Joe Johnson, you know, those are the guys who have to be the first one to practice and the last one to leave and stuff like that. And so Paul Pierce was sort of ridiculing them on some of their work ethic. And I think both of those guys took it personal. And you've seen Deron Williams come out. He had 35 points yesterday, and you know, he hit some Stephen Curry-like threes, and he was just off the charts. So maybe Williams and Joe Johnson and Brook Lopez took to heart what Paul Pierce said, and maybe it got those guys pumped up, because now they are tied 2-2, and they're heading back to Atlanta tomorrow, and you know, they're playing the best 2 out of 3. What, you know, can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, I can agree. I mean, they have been playing pretty well, and I stated back to what you were talking about, Cleveland and Chicago. If those two teams do meet in the playoffs, it's gonna be a fight. It's gonna be a fight. But back to Brooklyn and Atlanta, you know, that's gonna be an interesting matchup still to this day to see who comes out the winner. But as far as what I feel about it, it's more so saying that they took, you know, it was a lot of criticism, what you're saying about Paul Pierce and the other players involved. But you know, Brooklyn's fighting. Brooklyn's fighting to get to the next round. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we're here with Justin Baptiz. Of course, he's an aspiring future sports reporter, and I'm your host, PJ. We're going to go on a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be talking some more NBA playoffs, a little bit more on the East and getting to the West here on Hawaii Sports Update.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
Aloha, my name is Miley Scarpino, and I'm the host of the Empower Hour. If you're interested in health, nutrition, fitness, here on the island of Oahu, want to learn more about places to train at or different trainers available, then watch my show on Fridays at 3. We have a great time, and I hope that you'll come join us. Much aloha. Now go get swole.
Aloha and welcome back to Hawaii Sports Update. If you just joined us, we are here talking with Justin Baptiz, aspiring future sports broadcaster. And we are here talking about the NBA playoffs, and we're getting just a little bit into the Atlanta and Brooklyn series about, you know, how Paul Pierce sort of called out Darren Williams and Joe Johnson, and they have actually kicked their game up a notch. But to me, you know, the Atlanta Hawks, you know, which had the best record all season in the East, you know, if you know, sometimes Charles Barkley, you know, talks a little bit crazy, but sometimes he makes a lot of sense. And the point I'm trying to make is when he said that Atlanta is a jump shooting team, and jump shooting teams get hot and cold, he's very correct. You know, right now, you know, you got Kyle Korver missing a lot of threes. You have, you know, Atlanta not really working the ball around and sort of falling out of pattern of what they have been doing during the season. Atlanta was one of the teams that had, I think, 5 or 6 guys in double figures, which means that they spread the ball around. And in the playoffs, it just hasn't been like that. And so, you know, that's something that Atlanta's definitely going to have to keep an eye on. And Brooklyn might have exposed something, you know, defensively against those guys. What do you have to say about that?
I agree. I mean, Atlanta, their top target is Kyle Korver. I mean, he's the one that's been scoring a lot of threes for them, and he's the one that's kind of kept this team going as far as points are concerned, and still keeping them in the game.
Right.
But like you're saying, they do have to spread the ball more, and I think Brooklyn really did expose them in this last game that they played. So, you know, when you can expose a team like that in the playoffs, that's tough.
Well, yeah, you know, that's what playoff basketball is all about. Now, even though Cleveland has swept Boston, you know, let's get back to Cleveland for a minute. You know, Love is out indefinitely. That's going to hurt, definitely, especially if they match up against Chicago with, you know, with Gasol and Noah underneath. Okay, you know, everybody knows Jimmy Butler's going to be on LeBron. Okay, and we don't know who's going to be on Kyrie Irving. I don't think it's going to be Heinrich or anybody like that, but they're going to have to figure it out. But J.R. Smith missing these first 2 games, so that's 2 starters who are going to be out at least the first 2 games. Now, when J.R. Smith comes back, he's going to come back on the road, you know, not at home, and it's going to see, you know, it's going to be interesting to see if he can pick right back up after missing 2 games like that. But Kevin Love is going to definitely a significant blow to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, what do you think their chances are of advancing past Chicago now that Kevin Love is out and J.R. Smith is going to miss the first 2 games?
Oh man, I mean, J.R. Swish missing the game, missing the 2 games like you just mentioned.
Right.
That's a big blow. You got a guy who can penetrate and score. Kevin Love is a huge blow. For them to lose him, that was tough. But I think Chicago has a much better advantage, being that they're a more healthier team, and being that they can operate off of those guys that you mentioned.
Well, that's considering if they get past Milwaukee. Which,
right,
you know,
you're right about
that. They find themselves in a series, and it's going to be very interesting to see how much more LeBron's going to have to step his game up, because, you know, LeBron, to me, he's just sort of been cruising, you know. He's not worried about MVPs. He has 4 of those. He's worried about elevating his team, and that's one thing I will say that I respect about LeBron James. You know, you can tell that he elevates players around him just simply by what happened to Miami this year. They didn't make the playoffs. And, of course, he brought Cleveland back from obscurity for the second time, and they haven't been to the playoffs since he left, and now they're back. And so, you know, one thing that I do have to say, you know, LeBron makes everybody around him a lot better, and you have to give him props for that. But now Washington is just sitting, you know, they're sort of like the wild card. I mean, don't get me wrong. Washington will knock off Atlanta if Atlanta plays the way that they did against Brooklyn these past two games. The Washington Wizards will knock them off. They got the firepower in John Wall, Bradley Beal. They got the experience now with Paul Pierce. And they swept Toronto. And Toronto was, you know, for the first third of the season, Toronto had the best record in the East. And everyone was wondering, hey, you know, where are all these guys coming from? And Washington took them right out, man. And, you know, I think Atlanta or Brooklyn better not be sleeping on the Washington Wizards heading into the next round. What's your take on that?
Right, you're right. I mean, Washington has been playing exceptionally well, especially with the way they have leadership on that team. Marcin Gortat, Paul Pierce, Bradley Beal, John Wall. I mean, you got a lot of those guys, and Nene.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, they're a very well-experienced team. You would have thought Toronto would have had some firepower to get back into the series, but it was proven and shown that Washington is a much better team than Toronto is.
Absolutely, and what I think people don't realize is that Washington beat Toronto worse than Cleveland beat Boston. I mean, the Cleveland-Boston games, I think 3 of the games were within 9 points. You know, so Boston kept it legit, but Washington just pounded Toronto, and they're playing at a very high level right now, and it's going to be interesting. A lot of people just say it's Atlanta, Cleveland, and Chicago, but I think the way Washington played against Toronto, you know, you can't take that for granted at all, man. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how those two are going to match up because, you know, we know it's a guard world now. I mean, if you look at all the point guards, you know, Washington actually has 2 superb guards, and John Wall and Bradley Beal. So, you know, is Atlanta going to be able to match up with those guys? We know Brooklyn can at the right moment in time with Williams and Joe Johnson in their own right. But does Atlanta have guards like that who can match up with Washington's two guys?
I don't believe they do.
Right. So, you know, like I said, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this pans out at first, being tied 2-2, you know, Atlanta and Brooklyn. And then Chicago, you know, it's going to be interesting how it pans out. But Cleveland and Washington are both waiting in the wings for these guys. And, you know, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens. Now, today's games, it's also interesting, man. You got Dallas at Houston. Now, Houston came out the first 3 games and just smashed Dallas, okay? And then Dallas persevered, you know, in Game 4. But, you know, Dallas has a veteran leadership, you know, with Nowitzki, Tyson Chandler, Barea even, you know, to, you know, maybe hold off Houston if Houston doesn't come out, you know, playing 100%. Of course, you got Harden, you got Ariza, and you have Dwight Howard, who's been playing at a high level. What's your take on that series? Do you think Dallas is going to be able to sneak another game in? If they do, what's going to happen? To me, Dwight Howard hasn't proven himself to me as a playoff player yet. So, I mean, you know, and that's just my personal feeling, you know. When he was with Orlando, you know, they lost in the finals. But Dwight Howard has not had a huge playoff series that I can think of. And he's going to need one of those for sure. Maybe not against his series against Dallas, but he's going to need one for sure if Houston's going to advance. So what's your take on the Dallas-Houston?
Like you mentioned when we first talked, the 2 Texases.
The Texases, yeah.
But, yeah, Dallas and Houston, yeah, that's, man, well, I mean, luckily enough, Dallas was able to fight back and get a win. But like you said, I mean, it all depends on how the veteran leadership can come back into the series and continue to fight and continue to play. I mean, we know that they don't have Chandler Parsons. We know that they don't have Rondo for the remaining of the season. And he's probably not going to come back next year. But Dallas has to come out firing. Dallas has to come out playing like how they usually play, how they are meant to play. And if they can come out firing like they did in the last game, they can come back into the series. I wouldn't say they're going to win this series, but it all depends on how they're able to stop and control Houston.
Well, here's the thing. You know, Dwight Howard, ex-Defensive Player of the Year, I don't think Dallas is scared of Houston defensively. I mean, in Game 3, they scored 128 points and they lost. You know, 132. They gave up 130. But if you can go out and score 128 points against a team, I don't think that you really fear that team defensively. Okay. Now, if Chandler Parsons steps up, we know Dirk Nowitzki can't guard anybody anymore. You know, but he gets a pass on that. He's Dirk Nowitzki. But Tyson Chandler, if Tyson Chandler steps up and tries to lock down Dwight Howard in any kind of way, or just plays hard and takes away his heart, which we know can happen. But anyway, yeah, I know. but anyway, Tyson Chandler, I think Tyson Chandler is he's going to be huge in that series because he is somebody that you can fear defensively, and so if Houston and Dallas are just going to be running up and down the court scoring 128 points, anybody can win. Somebody's going to have to put their foot down and stop somebody from scoring 100 points. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, it's going to have to come down to at least those things. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Right.
Simple as that.
Okay, and now the San Antonio and the Clippers. This, of course, is the most interesting matchup of all. The Clippers came back and won at San Antonio, and San Antonio took the second game at the Clippers. So now each team has won on each other team's home court, and this comes down to a 2-out-of-3 series with the Clippers having the advantage. I mean, it's serious. It's crunch time now with these two guys.
Yeah.
And the winner of this series, of course, goes on to play the winner of the Dallas-Houston series. So, Golden State is probably going to be pitted up against, Golden State's probably going to be pitted up against Memphis. And so, I think that the San Antonio Clippers matchup, this game tonight, Game 5, is probably the most important game in the playoffs thus far. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with what you got to say about that. I mean, you're right about that. Game 5 is most important for tonight, especially with the way, the Clippers and the Spurs have been playing. Like they say, the winner who wins Game 5 wins 67 out of the series, I believe. And like you said, the momentum is with the Clippers, of course. They haven't been able to come back from a 2-1 deficit.
Yeah, and the whole history of their organization, every Game 3 that they've lost when the series was tied 1-1, they haven't pulled it off. But, this is the new Clippers, maybe this is the changing of the guard, man, San Antonio is a very formidable team, but is Ginobili still Ginobili? Is Parker still Parker? Is Diaw still Diaw? Is Duncan still Duncan? And you have these hungry guys, the Clippers up and coming. You got Blake Griffin, you got Chris Paul, you got Matt Barnes, you got DeAndre Jordan, you got JJ Redick, you got Jamal Crawford. You have all these guys who haven't really tasted too much success in the playoffs. And these guys are hungry, and with the leadership of Chris Paul, they might just be able to pull it off. I was totally convinced after Game 3 that the Clippers were done, that they were going to go back to their old ways and not be consistent. But the way they bounced back in Game 4, they have actually set themselves up to just hold home court. And if they hold home court, they're going to knock off the defending champions. So, both of those games are today. Dallas and Houston is at 2 o'clock Hawaii time. And San Antonio Spurs and the Clippers is at 4:30 Hawaii time. So it's going to be very interesting to go out there and check it out. Let's break down just a couple of those matchups, man. Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard against Chris Paul and J.J. Redick and Jamal Crawford. Who do you think's winning that battle so far? And what is either team going to have to do to get over the hump against the other one?
Well, Kawhi is playing much better. He's really stepped it up. Tony Parker is he looked good in the last game, but he's still a little bit hurt. The Chris Paul situation that you mentioned just now, yeah, those two have been going at it. But to get over the hump, they have to at least score double digits.
Okay, now, do you expect more out of J.J. Redick from the Clippers? Because J.J. Redick had a huge game in Game 4. He had 17 points, and then Austin Rivers came off the bench and supplied spark. You know, the coach's son came, and I think he had 16 or 17 points off the bench. Now, are the Clippers going to have to draw to that extra person every night in order to knock off the Spurs? Because we know that with the Spurs, anybody can do it on any given night. It's not consistently one person. It can be Duncan one night. It could be Diallo. The most consistent person since Kawhi Leonard's been back from injury has been Leonard. We know that he is the changing of the guard per se for the Spurs. That he is their new superstar, and he's the foundation of their team. But when you have guys like Duncan and Diallo and Ginobili, any of those guys can pick it up at any point in time. So on the Clippers side, I mean, is that what they're going to need to get over the hump? Have Redick or Austin or Jamal Crawford just go off?
They're going to have to, because without that, they're not going to be able to win. I mean, they can play good without their extra guy, but I think it's going to have to come down to an extra guy, because I think the Spurs are just too talented to have that happen.
Okay, and the Spurs they're not flashy. They're just super consistent. Like when you come up against the San Antonio Spurs, there's not going to be any surprises per se, like with the Clippers, like Austin Rivers just coming off and having a game like that. They're all going to be pretty consistent, and you pretty much know what you have. But then that's what makes the Clippers sort of like, unpredictable, because Rivers can have a game like that, and he could have another one, and Jamal Crawford can go off at any point in time coming off the bench. J.J. Redick has been consistently a decent scorer for the last couple years. And then, of course, your superstars in DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, and Chris Paul. It's going to be interesting when it all boils down. And Game 5 today back at the Staples Center is going to be a good test to see if the Clippers have matured into what people have been thinking them as a championship caliber team for the past 3 years, but they've just been a little bit inconsistent in the playoffs, and you never know. This might be the year that they break through, and we'll just have to wait and see, and that's why you play the game. Now with Golden State, they're just cruising, man. I mean, what can you say about Golden State? They took out New Orleans, and they're on cruise control, man. Them, Cleveland, and Washington are the only people who've clinched, and Golden State did it easier than Cleveland and easier than Washington. How do you feel that the atmosphere is in Golden State, and what do you think Steve Kerr is sitting back planning for the rest of the playoffs?
Well, Steve Kerr is actually planning on who we playing next.
Right.
Who we playing next, and it depends on who they are playing next. But obviously, it will be Memphis, and Memphis is going to be a tough challenge. But Mike Conley is out.
That's correct.
I remember that. Mike Conley is out, who you said is the most underrated player.
Yes, he is.
So Golden State has much of an advantage. The Splash Brothers are going to go firing off. Either way, you got it. And also, you also got to remember they also have Andrew Bogut and Draymond Green, who can play well. Andre Iguodala can also shoot the three and penetrate. But Harrison Barnes as well too. But
Yeah.
you got to look at it this way though. Golden State is a much better team than Memphis. They can shoot. They can hit you with any different weapons that they have.
Okay.
And Golden State is going to win this one.
All right. But, you know, Memphis is a little bit more schooled, a little bit more playoff tested over the last couple years. But like you said, with Conley being out, that's absolutely huge. We're here talking with Justin Baptiz, of course, aspiring sports broadcaster. And, of course, I'm PJ, and this is Hawaii Sports Update. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to be finishing up on the NBA playoffs and the breakdown of the teams, and it's getting there. So we'll see you on the other side of the commercial break on Hawaii Sports Update.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance. Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture. Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com or call 808-792-3919.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Aloha and welcome back to Hawaii Sports Update. I'm your host, PJ, and I'm here with Justin Baptiste, aspiring sports broadcaster, and my right-hand man, except today's on my left side. How's that? We're just here to let you know, if you want to tweet during the show or and ask any kind of question, you know, while we're live, you can go to ThinkTech HI and tweet us over there, and we'll try to respond to your questions the best that we can when you put them up on Twitter. So that's a new little toy that we have there, and trying to put it to good use. Now, Justin, you have Golden State against Chicago. You going to stick with that?
I'm going to stick with it.
You're going to stick with that?
I'm gonna stick with it.
Okay. Give me 2 reasons why Golden State's going. Give me 2 reasons why Chicago's going.
Chicago's going because I feel like they're going to be able to step up and use what they have and be able to play much better as a team, because that's going to be the most, that's going to be the key to their success. As far as Golden State advance, and it's going to be because of how the Splash Brothers can play. We know they can score. We know they can penetrate off the perimeter and hit you with any shot that they got. But as far as they're concerned, it's basically going to be about how they're able to penetrate and score, and how they're able to stop and play defense. The main thing is defense.
Okay, okay. And now for me, you know, I had picked Cleveland, and I had picked Golden State, right? Yeah. And you had picked the Spurs.
I did pick the Spurs. I'm still going with the Spurs.
Okay, okay. I had picked Golden State, and I had picked Cleveland. Now, Cleveland is, they're in a little bit of trouble. You know, it all depends on how much LeBron elevates his game. If LeBron elevates his game like I believe he can, Cleveland should be okay. But it's just going to be more difficult without Kevin Love. Kevin Love is a perennial all-star. You know, you're talking about taking away 20 points and 12 boards a game. In the playoffs, that's huge to try to make up. You know, only somebody like LeBron could make it up, and not even totally by himself. You know, that's a big shoes to fill, Kevin Love. And Of course, I'm going with Golden State, just because, you know, I just think their depth, and even though they're a young team and they haven't really been battle tested, they have a lot of good players. I mean, a lot. Like you were saying, Iguodala, and some of those bench players coming off the bench is just. I think Golden State is just a little bit too deep, and more deep than the rest of the field. Especially if the Clippers end up knocking off the Spurs, I think they're not going to have too much of a problem with either Houston or Dallas, and that the winner of the Clipper and Spurs series will probably face Golden State in the finals, and that's going to be an interesting battle because, like I said, Golden State is actually deeper than the Clippers. Even though the Clippers' top starting five might be the best starting five, their bench runs thin, and in playoff action. You need that bench. So, that's where we're at right now. The second round is coming up. Like I said, Cleveland is waiting, Washington is waiting, and Golden State is waiting. And it's going to be interesting these next couple of days to see who's going to pull through to face these guys. That's going to be it for us on Hawaii Sports Update and the NBA Breakdown. My name is PJ, your host, and we're here, of course, with Justin Baptiz. Justin, thank you for all your input and expertise on the NBA playoffs. And you guys, please stay tuned for the weekly sports update on ThinkTech Hawaii. This is Hawaii Sports Update with your host, PJ. A hui hou.